Good afternoon, and welcome to the 800 Credit Score Man Show. I am your host, Kevin King. He is I, and I am him, the 800 Credit Score Man himself. And I want to thank each and every one of you guys for coming in and listening to the 800 Credit Score Man Show. I truly appreciate it. Every Saturday, 1:30 Central Standard Time, and that's 2:30 on the East Coast. So what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about well, maybe not even first. I don't know how I'm going to do this just yet. We're going to talk about some do's and don'ts with your credit cards. Now, I know I've done a show in the past about some do's and don'ts overall with your credit. We're going to talk about that with credit cards today. In addition to that, we're going to talk about some signs that you may be in credit trouble. So we're going to talk about some of those signs and if you may need some professional help when it comes to your credit. So if you fit in any of those areas that I mentioned today, then you may need some professional help with your credit. And if you do, who are you going to call? You're going to call the 800 Credit Score Man. So you can contact me at 312-600-5855. And you can always shoot me an email at 800@creditscoreman.com. Yep, that's 800@creditscoreman.com. And you know, I got to give some shout outs, of course. So let me start out with my first shout out. I'm going to shout out the elder statesman. And that's Norman Bacon, affectionately known as Uncle Skippy. So I'm going to give a happy birthday shout out to him, whose birthday is today. So happy birthday, Uncle Skippy. You know it's not a show if it's not a king on the show getting a shout out. So I got to give a shout out to my cousin Ashley King. She celebrated her birthday during the week. So happy birthday to you, Ashley. And let me give this shout out too. This shout out is for Sherrod Denson. That's my nephew, y'all. So he celebrated a birthday earlier this week on the 27th. So happy birthday to you, Sherrod, as well. A milestone birthday too. And even though you're not old, if I say your age, it's going to make me look old, so I'm not saying it. So happy birthday, nephew. All right, so let's get to the show today. So I said I didn't know what I was going to do. Let's start out with some of the things that should show that you may need some credit help. So you need some credit restoration done to help you get up out of this hole. So one of the things that you definitely need to look out for is if you've been turned down. So if you've been turned down for credit because of your credit, not because of your income or you haven't been at your job long enough and things of that nature, but if you've been denied because of your credit, now you're going to get that denial letter in the mail and it's going to list you have too many accounts or you don't have enough accounts or your debt ratio is too high, all of those kinds of things. I think they list all of those things. They may not all apply to you necessarily, but I think they mention those things so you don't come back on them and say, well, you know what, I actually fit this criteria, and I fit that criteria, so why did you actually turn me down? So if you've been denied, that's a sign that you might need some credit restoration and help. Another thing you need to look out for, if you need a cosigner. So if you need a cosigner, they're saying, sure, we can help you out if you had some trouble in the past, but you need a cosigner. And again, it's not tied to your income or how long you've been at your job or you got short residency status and things of that nature. If it's dealing with your credit and they're saying that you need a cosigner, that may be a sign that you need some professional help when it comes to your credit. At the same time, if you can't get a cosigner, so if everybody in your family and your best friend, it's like, no way in hell am I going to co-sign for you because I know you don't pay your bills, that's definitely a sign that you need some credit help and you need some help with your responsibilities when it comes down to money. So you may need some credit restoration help as well. Here's another thing. If you can't get an apartment, so if you have been denied to get an apartment because your credit score is so low, or if you're trying to rent a house or anything of that nature, if you can't get one of those simply because of your credit, that's a definite sign that you need some credit help in itself. Unfortunately, some people are stuck in the same apartment because when they got the apartment, they either gave them a break or their credit was better at the time. So they're in that apartment, but they can't move. They can't go anywhere because nobody else will approve them to getting another apartment. So those are definitely issues and signs that you may need some credit restoration. Another thing, if you're afraid to check your own credit report because you just don't want to see what it's going to say, then you definitely need some help with your credit restoration. I know a lot of people, people that listen to the show. Hey, everybody that's listening to the show that's too afraid to check their credit. Now, as much as I talk about checking your credit, looking at everything, making sure it's yours, filing disputes, all of those things, a couple of people have contacted me and said, you know what, I've been listening to your show for a long time and I have not checked my credit. You've got to check your credit. If you're too afraid to check your credit because you just don't want to deal with it, putting your head in the sand is not going to help it get repaired. You're not going to be able to wait everything out for 7 years until it falls off of your credit report. Take a look at it. It may not be as bad as you think it is. Some people really think that they're in a bad situation and it doesn't seem that there's any way that they can crawl out of it. Maybe you can. You never know. You might need to talk to a professional. Again, if you're going to talk to a professional, who you going to call? You're going to call the 800 Credit Score Man, 312-600-5855. Every now and then I do a little thing, free consultation for 20 minutes for listeners to the 800 Credit Score Man show. And I'm going to do that, not this week coming up, because this week is packed. I mean, Sunday is packed. Then come Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and of course, Saturday is soccer games for my kid, as well as I have the show. So I'm packed all this week. But next week after this one, I'm going to do that. I'm going to offer that for one of the days next week. And I'm going to take probably the first 5 or 6 people that contact me that want one of those consultations. So come back next week. Make sure you're listening to the show so you can get the information on how to contact me to get in on that particular deal. All right, so again, if you're afraid to check your own credit report, it's definitely a sign that you might need some professional help. Here's another thing. If your credit score is lower than 650, if your credit score starts with a 3, a 4, or a 5, or a 6, you need to contact somebody. You need to contact me. Do that, 800-creditscoreman.com. If you have a credit score lower than 650, when you're at 650, you're still in the poor to bad range. So if you get above 650 to 700, then you put yourself in the fair range. At least you're in a fair range, which you can get some things done there. But if you're below 650, then you definitely need to contact me so we can help you with your credit score. Yet one more thing, and I think this is like point number 6 so far. So if your credit card company increases the interest rates on you, so you got a credit card, right? You're paying whatever interest rate. Maybe you had a decent rate at one point in time, 15.99%. Maybe you had one of those, and then now they've contacted you and they've pushed it to 21%. Or you started at 21 and they've pushed it to 23.99. If your credit card company starts to increase the interest rate on you, that's definitely a sign you need to take action and do something about it. All right? At the same point in time, if your credit card starts to reduce your limit, so maybe you had $1,000 limit before, and now you got a letter that says, hey, we're lowering your limit down to 800 or 500, then you definitely need to start looking into some credit restoration. The reason they're doing it is because they are evaluating your credit, periodically. They're not looking just to ding you on things, but they were looking to maybe even give you an increase. But they've come across your credit and they've said, oh no, this guy is headed for trouble because he's late on this, he's late on that, he's been late 3 times with us, so we need to reduce it to try to limit our liability if this person walks away and never pays us again. So, and I know since I said that, some of you guys are probably out there thinking now, are they pulling an inquiry on me, and is that going to impact my credit score, X, Y, and Z? That's not the way it works. So that's a soft pull for them. You're already a customer. They already have access to your information, and it'll be a soft pull. They cannot just pull a regular credit report on you and it placed on your credit report as an inquiry, which can hurt your credit or bring your credit score down anywhere between 2 and 10 points. So they can't do that, but they do evaluate them all the time. Periodically, they evaluate them for things like I mentioned already. So if they start to decrease your limits, you definitely need to be looking at some kind of credit restoration. If they say they're going to close your account, now they're supposed to notify you. Pretty much everybody that I've talked to ever about this situation, they were notified before or prior to them actually closing their account. But sometimes things happen. So I mean, I've had an account closed on me, not because I, wasn't doing well with it. I just hadn't used them in quite some time, so they closed the account on me. Typically, you're notified prior to them doing that. But if they're closing it because your credit is so bad, you start to take a dive in your credit score and everything else, then you definitely need to look into some kind of credit restoration. And like I said before, it's not always as bad as you think. I know you're thinking I've been behind on, 3 accounts or 4 accounts. I got a collection. That is like typical stuff, as far as I'm concerned. That's typical stuff. That doesn't put you outside the realm of what everybody else is doing and all of that. I mean, there are like 46 to 60 million people that have a credit score in the 600 somewhere. 47 million to 60 million people that have a credit score in the 600 somewhere. So you're not alone in this. You're not in bad company. You can get and you can climb up out of this as well. And you can probably do it without like filing bankruptcy and things of that nature. You can probably do it without that. And since I said bankruptcy, let me say this too. If you are thinking about filing bankruptcy because your credit is so bad in your estimation, prior to doing that, before you file bankruptcy, call me. Call me. Let's talk about it. Let me take a look at your credit and see if it's necessarily worth it. Or let's talk about if it's actually worth it. You're going to get that hit on your credit for 7 years or for 10 years if you file bankruptcy. So prior to doing that, let's take a look and see. I have recommended people file bankruptcy before, a couple of times before, because their credit was just in that kind of dire straits and their income and everything else was in dire straits. So I'm not going to try to convince you not to if you feel that you need to. But let somebody take a look at it, and I'll gladly do that for you. Again, 800@creditscoreman.com is where you can email me so we can take a look at that. You can get on my schedule. All right, so I said credit card limits reduced if they're closing your accounts as well. So you should definitely know this one. If you've got debt collectors calling you all the time, every day, every other day, some of these people will even call you on a Sunday. I don't even think that that's legal, but maybe they do. If you got debt collectors calling you, they got your home number, if you still have one. They got your cell phone number. They're calling you at the job. Then you may need to look at some kind of credit restoration services, all right? So if you got that happening for you, then absolutely contact somebody so they can kind of look into it for you so you can stop those debt collectors from calling you, and not just stop them from calling you, but actually take care of whatever this issue is. There's a couple of things that people may not realize. One, you don't necessarily have to pay if you owe somebody $1,200. You do not necessarily have $1,200 to pay them, but you could negotiate for a lower amount. And it doesn't always mean that you have to pay the lump sum either if you negotiate a lower amount. So if you decide, hey, and you guys agree with your creditor on, I'm gonna pay you $800 of this $1,200, then you might be able to say, okay, I'll pay you $100 a month, and it'll be for 8 months, and then this bad boy will be gone. And of course, if you're dealing with me, we're going to talk about negotiating them, taking it off your credit report altogether. So there are options for you. There are definitely options for you when it comes to your credit and your credit restoration. So make sure that if you got debt collectors calling you, one, that you always think top of mind that you don't want to pay the entire amount that they're claiming that you owe them. That's one. Number two, you want to negotiate for that, all right? And then number two, you want to have it removed. That's the holy grail, if you will, of what you want. You want to have that debt removed once you pay it, because that will help your credit score. And then number three, in this regard, talking about debt collectors, if you don't want them calling you, simply tell them that. So if you've been dodging their calls all the time because you're tired of talking to them, or as soon as you pick up the phone by mistake and they catch you on the phone, one, do not admit to anything. Don't say that it's your debt. Don't say, let me think about making a payment, anything of that nature. And so when that happens, tell them, stop calling you. If you tell them, do not call me, then they can no longer call you. Tell them to contact you via mail.